I never thought of my mom as anything but my mom. Until that night I came home early from college break and found her crying in the living room. She was wearing only an old tank top and panties, the kind she probably threw on after another bad date that left her feeling empty again. Her shoulders shook softly under the dim lamplight, and the faint scent of her vanilla body lotion mixed with salty tears hit me the second I stepped inside. God, something inside me twisted hard. I saw the curve of her hips, the softness of her skin glowing warm against the fabric, heart hammering, telling myself to look away, to say something normal like, "Mom, you okay?" But my eyes kept tracing the way the thin straps slipped off one shoulder, the gentle rise and fall of her breath. She was my mother. She raised me alone after Dad left. This was't supposed to feel like. She looked up, eyes red and glassy, and gave me that tired little smile that always broke my heart. "Sweetheart, Yuri home early." Her voice was raw, trembling just a little. I sat down beside her on the couch without thinking, close enough that our thighs brushed. The warmth of her bare skin pressed against my jeans sent a spark racing up my spine. I hated how aware I suddenly was of every inch between us. We stayed like that for what felt like forever. Her head eventually found my shoulder, hair spilling soft and fragrant against my neck. She vented quietly about feeling so lonely since Dad walked out years ago, how every day tended the same. Empty promises, guys who never saw her, never stayed. Her breath hitched when she tried to laugh weakly at my awkward joke about bad dates being practice for better ones. That small sound, that tiny vulnerability, made my chest tighten in ways I couldn't name. Internally I kept repeating this as just comfort. She needs someone to listen. Nothing more. But the other voice whispered darker, closer, "Shess, your mother. Stop looking at the way her thigh feels against yours. Stop noticing how her skin smells like home and something sweeter." Mornings after that became our quiet routine. She'd shuffle into the kitchen in that thin robe, the one that always slipped off one shoulder when she reached for the mugs. The fabric would brush my arm as she moved past me, soft and still warm from her body. Fresh coffee and her shampoo filled the small space, wrapping around me like a secret I didn't ask for. Every accidental touch, her hip grazing mine at the counter, her fingers lingering a second too long when she handed me a cup, sent electricity humming under my skin. I told myself it was normal. We'd always been close in this tiny apartment, just the two of us. But my mind kept replaying how the robe clung to her after a shower, damp fabric outlining every soft line before she tied it tighter. I'd catch myself staring at the curve where her neck met her shoulder, then look away fast, shame burning hot in my cheeks. "Shess, your mom. She sacrificed everything for you. Don't you dare let your thoughts drift there." Yet the pull was already there, quiet and insistent, like gravity I couldn't fight. One morning she laughed at something silly I said, leaning in just enough that her breath warmed my ear for a heartbeat. I forgot how to breathe. The ache started low, spreading slow and dangerous. I wanted to lean in too. I wanted to tell her she wasn't alone anymore. And I hated myself for it. That night on the couch again, her head on my shoulder felt heavier with meaning. Her bare thigh pressed warmer against mine than before, or maybe I was only imagining it. She sighed softly, content for a moment, and murmured, "You always know how to make me feel a little less broken." The words landed like a confession meant only for me. Time I pulsed them med loud in my ears. I sat there frozen, fighting the urge to slide my arm around her, to pull her closer instead of just letting her rest there. Inside, the war raged louder. "This is wrong. She raised you. She's the one who kissed your scraped knees and stayed up all night when you were sick." But another part whispered back, trembling with something new and terrifying. "She needs this, and maybe, so do I." The air between us felt thicker now, charged with everything we weren't saying. Her breathing had slowed, almost matching mine, and for one dangerous second I wondered what would happen if I turned my head just a little, if my lips brushed her hair. I didn't move, but the thought stayed, burning. Evenings pulled us back to the couch like a quiet ritual we both pretended was innocent. Her feet found their way into my lap again, soft and warm from a long day, and my hands moved without thinking. Slow circles along her arches, thumbs pressing just enough to draw out those little sighs she tried to hide. The texture of her skin under my palms felt too real, too inviting, like something I wasn't supposed to crave but couldn't stop chasing. She shifted slightly, toes curling against my thigh, and whispered, "You're the only man who still makes me feel cared for." My heart slammed against my ribs. I hated how those words lit a fire low in my gut, how they made me want to slide my hands higher, to pull her closer until there was no space left for guilt. "This is wrong," I told myself, fingers trembling just a fraction as I kept rubbing. "She raised you alone, worked double shifts so you could have everything." But the other voice crept in softer, warmer. "She looks at you like you're her safe place now. Like maybe she's been waiting for someone who actually sees her." I swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the flickering TV screen we weren't really watching. Her robe had slipped again, pooling loosely at her knees, and every breath she took made the fabric rise and fall in ways that stole my focus. Mixing with the faint warmth rising from her body, I wanted to bury my face in the curve of her neck and inhale until the world disappeared. Instead, I kept my touch light, professional almost, like a good son should, but inside, the hunger grew teeth. Laundry day hit like a trap I walked into blind. I was sorting the hamper in the dim hallway light when my fingers brushed something delicate. Her black lace panties, still carrying the heat from her skin. I should have dropped them instantly. I didn't. Instead, I held them longer than any decent person would, bringing them closer, letting that intimate, secret scent flood my senses. Sweetened, musky, and so unmistakably hers. Shame crashed over me in waves, hot and sickening, but the rush of heat that followed was stronger, pulling tight and insistent. My hands shook as I finally shoved them back, pulse roaring in my ears. "You're sick," the voice screamed while I stood there frozen. "She's your mom, not some fantasy you get to steal pieces of." But that night at dinner I could barely meet her eyes across the table. Every time she reached for the salt or laughed at something small I said, the memory rushed back. That warmth, that scent, that forbidden closeness. I poked at my food, cheeks burning, wondering if she could tell something had shifted in me. She tilted her head, concerns softening her features, and asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was just tired from classes. The lie tasted like ash, but the ache underneath felt alive. The power outage came sudden and total, plunging our little apartment into candlelight that danced across her face like secrets waiting to spill. She'd pulled out that bottle of wine meant for a date that ghosted her again, and we passed it back and forth on the couch, giggling as the thunder rolled outside. Tipsy warmth loosened her shoulders, made her lean in closer than usual. Her hand landed on my thigh as she whispered something silly about old horror movies, palm burning straight through the denim like a brand. I forgot how to form words. The heat of her touch spread upward, slow and dangerous, making my breath catch in my throat. "It's just the wine," I rationalized, heart hammering while her fingers stayed there, tracing idle little patterns that felt anything but idle. "She's lonely and dim here, the only one who never leaves. No one has to know how good this feels, how right it seems in the dark." Her eyes caught the candle glow, soft and glassy, and for a heartbeat she looked at me like I wasn't her boy anymore. Like I was the answer to all those empty nights. My mind fractured between stop and don't you dare stop, the storm outside mirroring the one building between us. She laughed again, low and breathless, shifting so her knee brushed mine under the blanket we'd pulled over our laps. The wine made everything softer, hazier, her scent stronger, her proximity magnetic. I wanted to cover her hand with mine, to guide it higher or pull her into me until the guilt drowned in something sweeter. But I stayed still, trembling on the edge, the almost moment stretching tight enough to snap. And then her thumb moved, just once, a tiny circle against my leg that sent lightning through every nerve. Late nights gaming became our unspoken ritual. The glow of the screen the only light in the living room after she finished her shift. She'd lean over my shoulder to watch, her body so close I could feel the warmth radiating through her thin nightshirt. Her breath brushed the side of my neck in soft, steady puffs, carrying that faint floral lotion she always used after her shower. It stirred memories of her tucking me in years ago, but now those same notes twisted into something sharper, hungrier, pulling at me like an undertow I couldn't fight. I froze every single time, controller tight in my hands, telling myself this had to stop before it spiraled further. "She's your mother," the voice hissed inside my skull, "the one who bandaged your knees and stayed up with you through every fever." But my body betrayed me, craving the next accidental press of her softness against my arm, the way her hair would tickle my skin when she laughed at a bad play. Each near contact left me breathless, heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted out. Then she mentioned the date. Casual, over breakfast. Oh, over breakfast. Eyes down on her coffee as if it meant nothing. Some guy from the office who finally asked. Jealousy hit me like a storm surge, hot and blinding, flooding every rational thought until my vision narrowed. Why him? Why anyone when I've been right here, holding her through every lonely night, making her laugh when the world didn't? That evening I timed it wrong on purpose, or maybe right. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the AC. I pushed open her bedroom door without knocking, pretending I needed to borrow something. She stood there half-turned back to me, slipping out of her work blouse. The smooth line of her spine curved into the swell of her hips, skin glowing soft in the lamplight, every inch familiar yet suddenly electric. She gasped, arms flying up to cover herself, fabric clutched tight to her chest. Instead of bolting or apologizing, she let out a nervous laugh that trembled at the edges. "You're growing up too fast, aren't you?" Her voice was light, but her eyes held something deeper, a flicker of awareness that made my stomach drop. I should have looked away. I didn't. The image burned itself behind my eyelids. The thought lodged in my chest, cracking the last thin wall of hesitation. The storm rolled in that same week, thunder cracking loud enough to rattle the windows and mask everything else. Rain lashed the glass as we ended up in her bed just talking, the way we used to when I was small and scared of the dark. Sheets cool and silky under us, her body heat close enough to pull me in. Lightning flashed, illuminating the worry lines around her eyes that I wanted to smooth away with my fingers. Her hand found mine under the covers, tentative at first, fingers brushing then lacing slowly. The contacts and heat blooming up my arm, slow and inevitable, like gravity finally winning. I forgot how to breathe properly, chest tight with the war raging inside. She's my mom, but God, I want her more than anything I've ever wanted. The line I'd drawn in my mind had already blurred weeks ago. Now it shattered completely under the weight of her palm against mine, warm and trembling just slightly. Thunder rolled again, closer this time, drowning out the small sound she made when our fingers tightened. The air between us thickened, charged like the sky outside, every inch of space humming with what neither of us dared name yet. Her thumb traced a tiny path along my wrist, innocent and devastating all at once. I turned my head toward her on the pillow, our faces inches apart in the dark, her vanilla scent wrapping around me until the room felt too small, too full of her. I wanted to close that last distance so badly my teeth ached with it, but I held still, pulse roaring, the internal storm matching the one battering the walls. This closeness shouldn't feel like salvation. It shouldn't make every lonely year she'd carried alone echo back at me as my fault to fix. Yet here we were, hands linked under silken thunder, the forbidden secret no longer just in my head but breathing between us, alive and waiting. And in that suspended heartbeat, her fingers shifted again, pressing firmer as if testing the same edge I was. Our lips met in the darkness, tentative at first, like to people afraid the storm might hear us. Soft and certain, then something deeper took over, a hunger that had been building in silence for months. Her familiar vanilla scent wrapped around me completely, pulling me under until the thunder outside felt distant and small. My hands moved across the curves I had tried so hard to ignore, tracing the warmth of skin that had once only meant safety and home. She whispered my name against my mouth, a broken confession that made my chest tighten with equal parts terror and need. For those few stolen minutes, every rule we had lived by simply dissolved. No turning back now, not after this, but guilt surfaced in her like a wave she couldn't hold off. Her trembling hands pressed against my chest, not pushing me away entirely, but slowing everything down just as the heat between us threatened to consume us both. "We can't. Not yet," she breathed, voice shaking with the same conflict I felt tearing through me. Her eyes glistened in the flashes of lightning, shame and lingering desire fighting for control. We didn't go further that night, yet the heavy, desperate closeness we shared left us both breathless and changed. bodies still humming with what we had almost surrendered to. She made me promise, her fingers still laced with mine under the sheets, that this would stay locked between us. No one could ever know. The weight of that secret settled over us like another layer of thunder. In the quiet aftermath, lying beside her with the storm still raging outside, I felt the devastating mix of pleasure and guilt settle deep in my chest. The scent of her skin lingered on mine, warm and intoxicating, and the memory of her soft sounds would haunt every quiet moment from now on. We both knew this was only the beginning of our forbidden secret, complicated and addictive in ways that scared me. The rain eventually eased, but the ache inside didn't. She turned toward me in the dark, her breath brushing my shoulder one last time before sleep tried to claim her. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how something that felt so right could twist everything we were into something we could never undo. Morning light filtered in, pale and hesitant, like it knew it shouldn't witness this. We moved around each other in the kitchen with careful distance, eyes meeting only in quick, loaded glances. Coffee tasted different now. Everything did. She brushed past me, reaching for a mug, and the brief contact sent electricity racing under my skin again. I wanted to pull her close right there to finish what the storm had started, but her small smile carried a warning we both understood. This hunger wasn't gone. It had only grown sharper, more insistent. Days blurred after that. We kept our promise, pretending in front of the world that nothing had shifted. Yet every shared meal, every late-night conversation carried the undercurrent of what we had tasted. She would catch me watching her and look away too quickly, cheeks flushed with the same shame that kept me awake at night. That we had to, but the pull was stronger than any rational voice left in my head. She was still my mom, the one who had raised me through every hard year alone, and I was still her son, the only one who truly saw how deeply she had been starving for touch, for closeness, for someone who wouldn't leave. The secret lived in the almost moments, a hand lingering too long when passing the salt. Her head resting on my shoulder during a movie, breath steady but heartbeat racing against me. We never spoke of that night directly, yet it hovered between every word we exchanged, a silent storm waiting to break again. Part of me ached for the day she might weaken and let us cross that final line. Another part feared it more than anything, because once we did, there would be no pretending anymore, no going back to being just mother and son. Even now, weeks later, I catch myself replaying the feel of her lips, the way her body had trembled under my hands. The guilt has faded, but neither has the craving. She looks at me, sometimes across the room, with eyes that hold the same unresolved question. We both know we'll crave it again. The forbidden secret binds us tighter than blood ever could, leaving us suspended in this aching space between what we are and what we desperately want to become. And every time the thunder rolls in the distance, I wonder if tonight will be the night we finally stop fighting